One person is dead and another missing at sea as Typhoon Mawar brings high waves to the east coast. Taiwan's vice president says offline nuclear plants could be restarted during an energy crisis.
I'm here at the start of Asia's largest computer expo to see what the future holds for artificial intelligence.
Plus, mer people make a splash at Taiwan's first mermaid competition. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. One person is dead and another missing after high waves driven by Typhoon Mawar swept them out to sea. A search for the missing person continues as the storm approaches Taiwan's east coast. John Van Trieste has the latest.
In Yilan County in northeastern Taiwan, it's day 2 of a search for a child who's missing at sea. The middle school student had gone to the beach on Sunday morning for a walk with a 25-year-old man she'd met online. A high wave overtook them. The man says he was only able to save himself and called for help. Taiwan's east coast is experiencing rough seas as Typhoon Mawar approaches. Waves in some areas have reached 4 meters high, hindering rescue efforts. A search by boat had to be called off in favor of a drone search due to the bad conditions.
我们在持续的搜索中。那我们另外有请渔业电台广播通知作业渔船协助搜索试点的民众。
To the south in Huang County, high waves driven by the storm have already claimed at least 1 life. Also on Sunday, a huge swell carried away 2 boys who'd been playing with friends, despite warnings.
他们说就是不要太靠近啊，他们说没事没事这样，是没有看到他们掉下去，是那个小朋友跑上来说他们被卷下去。
Though rescuers managed to save 1 boy, a helicopter search found a second one dead on Sunday afternoon. Typhoon Mawar has already caused heavy damage in Guam, and Taiwanese officials expect to issue a sea warning Monday afternoon. The storm will linger off Taiwan's east coast from Wednesday to Friday, gradually turning north toward Japan. Alex Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Nuclear power plants could be reopened in case of emergencies. That's the word from Vice President and Democratic Progressive Party presidential candidate Lai Ching-te. Taiwan currently imports 80% of its energy and is looking for ways to become energy independent. Eric Gao has more.
An unexpected statement from Taiwan's Vice President Lai Ching-te at a town hall in a Taipei university. In contrast to his party's plans to decommission and dismantle the country's 4 nuclear power plants by 2038, Lai says he is open to keeping them intact for emergencies should he win the presidency in next year's polls.
相关单位有在规划，怎么样把这个已经这个停机的这一个核能机组维持一个可以未来紧急使用的这种情况。
Lai's statement was in response to a hypothetical question about a Chinese naval blockade around Taiwan. Should that happen, energy supplies would be limited. Taiwan imports 80% of its energy. Since the statement, Lai's ruling Democratic Progressive Party has sent a press release saying they still support a nuclear-free Taiwan. The opposition Kuomintang, or KMT's presidential candidate Hou You-yi, however, says he supports nuclear power.
核安一定做好，核废料妥善的处理，核能就是我的选项。
Proponents see nuclear power as a way for Taiwan to sustain itself.
Taiwan, it is a small island. That's why we need more stable electricity supply for this island. So they are supporting nuclear power because in terms of energy security, nuclear power is the best solution for Taiwan.
When current President Tsai Ing-wen took office in 2016, the government began decommissioning nuclear plants in favor of other energy sources, such as liquefied natural gas and green energy. The goal is for Taiwan to create more avenues to become energy independent, including harnessing solar and wind power. By 2025, 15% of the island should be dependent on renewable and clean energies. But before then, Taiwan will elect a new president, And with many here against the use of nuclear energy, Lai's statement could affect his chances in next year's polls. John Su, Bing Wang, and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
A candidate in Taiwan's upcoming presidential election has criticized a revised law that will bar ex-convicts from running in elections. Under the new law, people convicted of bribery or corruption charges will be unable to participate in votes. James Chater has more.
Taiwan is gearing up for its presidential vote, set for January next year. But an updated law means anyone previously convicted of bribery or corruption will be barred from this and any future elections. It sparked debate in Taiwan where accusations of bribery are common. Ko Wen-je, a presidential candidate for the Taiwan People's Party, the country's third largest, opposes the move. He says it undermines efforts to reintegrate criminals.
他只要犯过这种罪，你就把他从此他让在这个社会隔绝。如果这样的话，我们这个社会还需要设更生人协会吗？干脆只要犯一个小罪，全部把他枪毙就好了。
A legislator from Taiwan's opposition Kuomintang, or KMT, has already pulled out of next year's race. Lin Wenrui was placed on probation for bribery charges 20 years ago.
不但影响更生人，更对于法官已经宣判免刑以及缓刑的相关人等有非常大的影响。
Corruption allegations have long plagued Taiwan's politics. In 2009, former President Chen Shui-bian of the governing Democratic Progressive Party was sentenced to life in prison on embezzlement charges. Chen was acquitted of some charges last year. Now the DPP, which proposed the law, says it will ensure Taiwan's upcoming election remains honest.
这些意见呢，我们也都在委员会里面呢都有讨论过了。那到最后是民进党一致投票嘛，那这个不就是集体承担，然后来接受社会的检验了。
Taiwanese politics is an often messy business, but with this updated law, politicians may be encouraged to keep it a little bit cleaner. Patrick Chen and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang has kicked off Asia's largest computer expo, Computex. He addressed thousands of people in a keynote speech in Taipei, highlighting artificial intelligence as the thing to watch. Joyce Tseng was there.
The tech world has been buzzing about Jensen Huang. He's the CEO of Nvidia, the California-based software company that makes the computer chips that's powering artificial intelligence. Just last week, the company made its biggest one-day valuation jump of over $200 billion US.
And at the core, just as with every single computing era, it needs a new computing approach. In this particular era, the computing approach is accelerated computing, and it has been completely reinvented from the ground up.
He's just re-emphasized the importance of accelerated computing and generative AI to the future of software. Now he's just kicked off Computex Taipei, which is Asia's largest computer tech trade shows that will be happening all week long. Howard Zhang, Jaime Ocon, and Joyce Dunn for TaiwanPlus.
While Huang is speaking at Computex, he's definitely not asking you to join a group chat to give you investment advice. Scammers in Taiwan are taking advantage of Huang's presence to lure more victims. At least one social media account has been publicly flagged for impersonating Huang. Tactics like these are not new, and police are reminding people to be careful about posts they see online. One simple piece of advice the authorities have is to look for a verification checkmark. The government has set up a website to check if certain accounts have been previously identified as scams. Coming up, we meet the Taiwanese architects reimagining the country's buildings of the future. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Japan says it will shoot down any North Korean missile that enters its airspace. This comes after Pyongyang alerted Tokyo that it plans to launch its first military spy satellite into orbit sometime between May 31st and June 11th. Tokyo urged Pyongyang not to go through with the launch and says it is preparing to destroy any projectile that would land in Japanese territory. Military experts say the satellite is part of North Korea's efforts to step up its surveillance technology. They say it could be used to guide North Korean missiles in a military conflict. South Korea is ramping up its bid to become a major arms exporter, aiming to make big gains in the European market. And a new deal with Poland will allow Seoul to make inroads into a region that currently has a big demand for weapons. Once again, John Van Trieste has more.
South Korea is flexing its military muscle on the other side of the world. Seoul wants Europe to buy its tanks, rocket launchers, and more. And as the war in Ukraine rumbles on, it's betting there will be customers. Poland is already on board with a $13.7 billion deal.
Obviously, the outbreak of the Russian war invaded Ukraine. And after that, we get lots of requests from the Polish government for K2 tank and K9 howitzers and FA-50.
Already, it's South Korea's biggest ever arms deal. But this is just the beginning of Seoul's weapon sales ambitions.
체코나 아니면 루마니아나 슬로바키아, 북유럽 쪽에 핀란드, 에스토니아, 라트비아, 리투아니아 이런 국가들 쪽에서 아마 방산 혜택에 대해서 기존에 이제 유럽 국가에서만 제품을 사는 걸로 생각하고 있다가 한국이라는 이제 좋은 제품들이 싸게 들어오고 빨리 갖다 줄 수 있는 것들이 점점 알려지게 된 계기가 돼서 아마 단순하게 이제 저희 회사뿐만 아니라 다른 한국 업체들한테도 아마 좋은 기회가 될 것 같습니다.
Major inroads in Europe would further bolster a part of South Korea's economy that's in the midst of a sudden boom. Between 2018 and 2022, South Korea was the world's 9th biggest seller of weapons, with 2.4% of the global market. It's a small share, but growing fast. Compared to the previous 5 years, South Korea's arms sales have boomed. They rose by more than 70%. That's a bigger increase than any other major exporter. Some analysts say this growth is the result of U.S. backing. Many South Korean systems are built with U.S. technology, but Seoul produces these weapons for cheaper than the U.S. can. The idea is that South Korean suppliers can essentially give U.S. allies a less costly way of obtaining U.S.-type weapons.
我们看伊拉克是这样，菲律宾是这样，对不对？印尼也是这样，这些国家全部要买 T-50的，几乎都是美国想办法去扶植这个国家的空军，帮助他这个空军建立起战力来的一个国家。
And others say a history of failed or delayed projects from more established suppliers will also help give South Korean firms a leg up.
Countries' interest in South Korea's offer may only grow considering the limited production capacity of Germany's defense industry, which is a major arms supplier in the region. For example, in 2018, Hungary has ordered 44 Leopards tanks from Germany, and so far none has been delivered.
Seoul is also looking to spots of tension closer to home, like the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait, to further shore up its growing status as an arms exporting heavyweight. John Su and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has been reelected after winning a runoff vote on Sunday. Erdogan beat his opponent, former civil servant Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, with just over 52% of the vote. The final results have not been released. Erdogan has ruled Turkey for 20 years. While his first decade in power saw rapid economic growth, his more recent economic policies have been blamed for high inflation and a cost of living crisis. He has also become increasingly authoritarian, cracking down on dissent and civil society. The Turkish president thanked his supporters at a victory speech in Istanbul on Sunday night.
Öyle bir kazanacağız ki kimse kaybetmeyecek demiştik. Öyleyse bugün kazanan sadece Türkiye'dir.
U.S. President Joe Biden and members of the opposition Republican Party say they have reached an in-principle agreement to lift the U.S. debt ceiling. Biden and Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on Sunday said they had agreed to suspend the $31 trillion debt limit until 2025. If approved, the move will prevent the federal government from defaulting on its debts. The agreement will now need to be passed by a divided Congress before June 5th. The U.S. Treasury Department says the country will run out of money if a deal isn't reached by this date.
Speaker McCarthy and I have had several productive conversations, and our staffs continue to meet as we speak, as a matter of fact, and they're making progress. I've made clear time and again defaulting on our national debt is not an option. The American people deserve to know that the Social Security payments will be there, the veterans' hospitals remain open, and that economic progress will be made, and we're going to continue to make it.
It's on many people's bucket list, but very few actually make it. Today marks the anniversary of the first successful ascent of Mount Everest, which took place 70 years ago. But the day is dampened by growing concerns about the mountain's future. Sally Jensen has more.
It's an ascent that's not for the faint of heart. Thousands of climbers have reached the world's highest peak, and hundreds have lost their lives since it was first scaled by two men back in 1953. New Zealand's Edmund Hillary and Nepali Sherpa Tenzing Norgay were met with a hero's welcome after reaching Everest's 8,849-metre summit 70 years ago to the day.
When I was crossing a crevasse, a large lump of ice gave way on which I was standing, and I set off down a crevasse. Well, Tenzing, who was following, had the rope tight in a very short time and pulled me up, so I didn't go very far.
Now known as Everest Day, the anniversary has become a bittersweet one, as concerns grow about rising temperatures melting snow and glaciers. Harsher and more unpredictable weather in Nepal's Himalayas have made ascents today even more volatile than in the 1950s.
Climate change ko asar chahi Antarctica ko seal machalai matrai huine hai, त्यहाँको whale माछालाई मात्रै होइन है, त्यहाँको penguinलाई मात्रै होइन है, हाम्रो हिमाली क्षेत्रमा त प्रत्यक्ष हाम्रो चाहिँ त्यहाँको हिमाली बासिन्दाहरूलाई चाहिँ असर परिराखेको छ.
It's estimated that Mount Everest's glaciers have lost around 2,000 years of ice in just the past 30 years. These deteriorating conditions pose a threat not only for mountaineers, but especially for their Sherpa guides, whose livelihoods depend on the flow of visitors.
Because most of the climbers are paying a lot to climb Everest, so they don't know the danger, when to stop, and they would push themselves. And most of them can actually end into death. Without Sherpas, I can almost say 95% of the climbers wouldn't make it up there.
The Everest Day weekend was marked by the season's first wave of climbers reaching the summit. Hundreds more people will attempt to scale the mountain in the coming weeks. But while Nepal and the mountaineering community celebrate 70 years since Tenzing and Hillary's achievement, as the climate crisis accelerates, the future of Mount Everest is ever more uncertain. Devin Tsai and Sally Jensen for TaiwanPlus.
Campers have spotted one of Taiwan's rarest animals in eastern Taiwan. A Formosan black bear was filmed foraging for food at Xiangyang Campground in Taidong County. Authorities have suspended the campsite's operations, refunding reservations as a result. That's because forestry officials say although the bears typically avoid people, they can get aggressive. Authorities advise people who encounter Formosan black bears in the wild to remain calm and back away slowly. One of the world's most prestigious architecture exhibitions is being held in Venice, and Taiwanese designers are making their mark. Huang has more.
A farm away from home. These agricultural buildings from Taiwan are on display at the Venice Architecture Biennale. They represent a variety of landscapes, from oyster fields by the sea to a mountain tea house. Co-curator Su Mengdong says the intention is to redefine the concept of architecture, echoing this year's theme, the laboratory of the future.
每一个构筑的行为都是一个建筑的开始，所以借由这件事情回过头来去想台湾这个环境， 上面发生的各种大大小小的事情，所以就不会只是混凝土构造物或者是只是木构物才是台湾建筑，而是建筑如何跟环境对话这件事情。
The inspiration for this year's display all began with a visit to a karaoke venue. Curator Zheng Wei was impressed at how this recreational space was adapted to its environment. Zheng then led a team to the Taiwanese countryside to observe how people adapt their structures to nature. Co-curator He Zhongde was part of the team. He says Taiwanese architecture still needs to find its own voice.
我们很多的文化来自于接收别人已经发展有一定程度的内容，但是在另外一个层次上面，怎么样找到一个在文化上面有一个独自的本土的比较自主性强的一个观点，这个是一个蛮重要的事情。
Taiwan's history of colonization and modernization has seen it adopt and discard many architectural trends over the years. In that context, the push toward more environmentally friendly architecture seems no different. But what is changing is how modern Taiwanese architects are now centering Taiwan in their designs, reflecting a newfound self-confidence. Kama Shi, Biqi Zhang, and Yujin Huang for TaiwanPlus.
You might only get the chance to see some of Taiwan's most famous artifacts while they're protected in glass cases. But the National Palace Museum has recreated several models of its priceless antiques as a way to make learning more accessible to special needs students. Joyce Zeng has this report.
This is Chen Zhenjie, and in his hands is a replica of one of Taiwan's most treasured masterpieces. It might look like just a piece of meat, and it is. It's called the meat-shaped stone, and it was carved during the Qing dynasty, the final era of imperial China from 1644 to 1912. By using touch and audio guidance, visually impaired student Zhen Jie is able to feel what the real artifact is like.
它长得跟东坡肉一样，可是等一下，弹起来，这不能吃哦，因为这是一块石头。
The real meat-shaped stone is part of Taiwan's National Palace Museum's permanent collection and can only be seen behind its display glass. But now the museum has recreated 28 of its historic treasures, including the Jasper pork belly and famed jade cabbage, to give children with special needs a chance to learn about these artifacts.
触摸，还有嗅觉，还有听觉，来引导小朋友认识生活相关的面向，来介绍故宫文物。
For 3 days, the National Palace Museum shared these replicas with students of the Huiming School for Blind Children in Taichung. To help aid their learning even further, the museum staff also translated artifact descriptions into Braille.
全盲的孩子，他就是完全要靠声音跟触觉去学习。那如果是低视力的，他也要很近去观察，才可以有这样的感觉。
Normally, museums are places where children are told not to touch things. But that isn't the case here. With these adaptations of Taiwan's most prized antiques, the museum can now help students with all types of needs learn about their country's past. Alex Chen and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
Over 60 mer people made a splash at a competition in Taichung over the weekend. Our reporter Sandy Chi was there to see them flip their fins.
Gliding through the water with choreographed movements. This is Taiwan's first ever mer people competition. It was held at a public swimming pool in central Taichung City. A total of 64 people participated in the event, including women, men, and children.
那美人在台湾其实这几年在表演啊，在这个舞台上，其实他们越来越蓬勃的发展。那我们希望创造这样子的环境，给这些表演者一个舞台来去展现自己。
The sport is known as mermaiding and is similar to freediving, but with a mermaid tail. It requires not only training and a license, but also a sense of beauty. To look glamorous underwater, many practitioners spend 3 to 4 hours putting on makeup and managing their outfits. Judges rate the performances according to music, outfits, stage management, and movements.
因为其实要用到很多核心的肌力运动去做这个 wave， 你的水下的技巧也要好，然后游动技巧也要好，然后还有表情控制跟头发控制这些。
At the event, 30-year-old Lai Ching-te, who has been mermaiding for 3 years, managed to grab the award for Best Outfit this year.
设计理念就是希望用海洋的颜色呢，跟自己的想法，然后去散发那种自己的光芒。
Organizers say there are up to 2,000 people in Taiwan who have taken up mermaiding. And while it's still not a particularly well-known sport, it's growing in popularity.
我觉得人鱼是不分年龄、性别，就是只要你想要成为人鱼，都可以变成人鱼。
This mermaid competition brought together merpeople from across Taiwan, letting them show their underwater beauty and grace to their friends on the land. Damon Lin and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally today, we leave you with images of cheerleaders from Taiwan's Rakuten Monkeys Baseball Club performing at the Oakland Coliseum in California for Taiwan Heritage Day. It was a real home run. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app and follow us on social media.